All right, so welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to do something a little different. We're gonna go to France,
Ah,
but not like for a vacation or anything. No, we're gonna
I wish.
yeah, well maybe someday. But for now, we're going to be exploring French folklore,
Okay.
and specifically some of its most, I guess, well-known or famous or
Infamous.
infamous mythical creatures. Right. So
Yeah.
I've got some excerpts here from an article that kind of summarizes a lot of these creatures and their stories.
Yeah.
And I thought it'd be really interesting to kind of go through these and figure out what they might tell us about French culture
Mm.
and maybe even ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what's so fascinating about folklore and the creatures that populate those stories is that they often act as mirrors,
Mhm.
reflecting our kind of deepest fears and hopes and beliefs.
I love that. Creatures as mirrors.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take a peek at the first reflection, shall we? We're starting with Melusine.
Melusine.
And just picture this. A beautiful fairy princess, but with a secret. Every Saturday, she transforms into a serpent.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine the kind of tension that would create?
Absolutely. That tension is exactly what makes her story so compelling.
Yeah.
Um, she marries this nobleman, but only under the condition that he never sees her on Saturdays.
Right.
you know? And it's such a classic fairy tale trope, this hidden identity, the forbidden knowledge.
It's like a ticking time bomb, right?
Right.
You just know that curiosity is going to get the better of somebody.
Exactly.
And it does. So the nobleman can't resist, breaks his promise, and sees Melusine in her true form. And of course, things go downhill from there, as you might expect.
Of course, yeah. It really highlights the importance of trust, I think.
Yeah.
And keeping oaths, especially in the realm of the fae, right?
Yeah.
Breaking a promise to a fairy. Well, that rarely ends well in folklore.
Yeah, it's not just about a broken promise. It's
Yeah.
about the kind of promise.
Yeah.
What's fascinating to me is that Melusine is also said to be connected to, like, a real French noble family, the House of Lusignan.
Oh, wow.
You've heard of them?
I have not.
It makes you wonder how much of this story is rooted in, like, actual history
Right.
and how much is, pure imagination.
It's a great example of how folklore can kind of weave itself into the fabric of reality, right?
Yeah.
Blurring the lines between myth and history.
I love it. Okay, now let's shift gears a little bit
Okay.
and venture into a darker corner of French folklore. We're heading to the caves of southwest France. Go to the Lou Carcolh. Now, this creature
Lou Carcolh.
is basically like a snail-serpent hybrid
Interesting.
that oozes poison from his tentacles. Not exactly something you want to run into, on a spelunking expedition.
Yeah, I'm getting kind of creeped out already.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think the Lou Carcolh really taps into this kind of primal fear
Mm-hmm.
that I think we all have, of the unknown, especially things that lurk in darkness.
Right.
Caves with their hidden depths and their, like, winding tunnels. They've always been these places of mystery and, potential danger.
It makes sense.
Right? You're in this, like, enclosed space
Right.
surrounded by shadows. You never
Yeah.
know what might be slithering around the next corner.
Right. I'm getting chills.
But what's interesting to me is that this fear of the unknown, it's not just about caves, right?
Right.
It pops up in a lot of folklore, often tied to creatures that are very much associated with specific environments.
Yeah.
Like, a creature of the forest or a creature of the sea, So the fact that the Lou Carcolh is so connected to caves, that just makes it even more unsettling, I think.
Absolutely. It's that combination of the universal fear with a very specific intangible setting that really gives it its power.
Okay, well, let's leave those creepy caves behind
Ooh.
and move on to a creature that's a bit more, well, let's just say it's not subtle. We're talking about the Tarasque.
The Tarasque.
Now, this beast is described as having the head of a lion,
Okay.
a shell like a turtle, 6 bear-like legs, the tail of a scorpion, and scales like a dragon.
Wow, that's a lot going on.
Talk about over the top,
Yeah.
right? But here's the twist.
Oh,
It was eventually tamed by St. Martha.
St. Martha.
Yeah. So the Tarasque story is often seen as like this classic battle between good and evil,
Mm-hmm.
with St. Martha, representing faith and compassion and all that.
Right.
But there's an extra layer here, though.
Okay.
Because even after she tames this creature, the townspeople, they're still terrified. and they actually end up killing it.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that part.
It's almost like they couldn't get past their fear,
Right.
even when the threat was, gone.
Right.
It makes you wonder how much of our fear is based on, like, actual reality
Yeah.
and how much is just driven by our own perceptions.
That's a really interesting point.
Right. It certainly raises questions about the nature of fear itself, right?
Right.
Like, is it something that we can ever truly conquer?
Yeah.
Or is it always kind of lurking beneath the surface, just waiting to resurface?
That's a great question.
And you know what's really cool? They actually have an annual Tarasque festival in France.
Oh, really?
Yeah, to commemorate this legend. Talk about keeping a story alive, right?
That's awesome.
It makes me think about how these creatures, even the scary ones, can become like woven into the cultural fabric
Yeah.
of a society.
Absolutely. They become more than just stories. They become symbols.
Right.
Reminders of cultural values, shared experiences.
All right. Now, we're going to meet a creature who's, I guess, less about spectacle and more about, like, a chilling, quiet dread. This is the Ankou, Brittany's harbinger of death.
Oh, the Ankou.
Picture this. A skeletal figure, cloaked in shadows, wielding a scythe.
That's pretty standard.
Right.
Yeah.
But here's the truly unsettling part. Its head can swivel all the way around,
Oh, wow.
so it sees everything. No escape.
That's terrifying.
I know, right?
Yeah.
The Ankou is this really powerful personification, I think, of our universal fear of mortality.
Right.
Death, in a lot of cultures, it's not just an event.
Right.
It's an entity.
Yeah.
And the Ankou, with that, like, all-seeing gaze, it really drives home the idea that death is inescapable.
Right.
It's coming for you.
Oh, boy.
You can't hide.
Yeah, I'm getting chills again.
But it's interesting, though, because even in the face of this terrifying figure, there's still that human instinct, I think, to try and, like, outsmart fate.
Right.
There's this belief that you can evade the Ankou
Oh, okay.
by crossing water or offering him tobacco.
Interesting.
It's almost like even when we're facing something as inevitable as death, we can't help but hope.
Right. It speaks to our resilience, I think.
Yeah.
Our desire to find some semblance of control, even in the face of the ultimate unknown.
Yeah. It makes you think about how throughout history people have tried to, like, make sense of death.
To grapple with its mystery. And sometimes that means creating these incredibly vivid and often frightening figures,
Absolutely.
But you know what? I think we need a little bit of a lighter note after that.
Okay.
So let's meet a creature that's a little less doom and gloom
Okay.
and a lot more mischievous.
Right.
I'm talking about the babo.
The babo.
This is essentially like the French boogeyman.
Oh, okay.
The creature parents used to scare their kids into behaving.
Every culture seems to have its version of the babo, right?
Exactly.
This figure who embodies mischief serves as a cautionary tale.
It's the classic, if you don't eat your vegetables, the babo will get you kind of thing.
Right.
Right. But what's interesting is that the babo, it isn't always like this scary figure lurking in the shadows.
Okay.
They actually make appearances in local carnivals.
Really?
Yeah. Turning fear into festivity.
That's cool.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that folklore can be both terrifying and entertaining. Absolutely. It reflects the full spectrum of human emotions and experiences.
Yeah.
I love that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not just one thing or the other.
Right,
It
yeah.
can be all of it,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fascinating way to think about it, right? Turning something that was once purely meant to frighten into a source of communal celebration. And speaking of celebrating unique adaptations, let's journey to the French Alps.
Okay.
Home to the Barbagazzi.
The Barbagazzi. Okay, so it's like we've gone from shadowy caves and ominous figures to, like, a winter wonderland, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me about these Barbagazzi. What makes them so unique?
Well, picture this. They're small and furry with these big, fluffy beards.
Okay.
And they have enormous feet that they use to ski through the snow
Wow.
with incredible agility.
Yeah.
They live high up in the mountains in harmony with nature.
They sound almost adorable.
They're pretty cute.
It's a completely different vibe from, like, the Ankou or even the Lou Carcolh. Is there a connection between their appearance and their, alpine home?
Absolutely. I mean, they're perfectly adapted to their environment. Those large feet help them navigate the deep snow. Their thick fur keeps them warm in that harsh mountain climate.
Right.
They embody the beauty and the challenges of mountain life.
It's a good reminder that, nature is just full of incredible diversity.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of creatures that are kind of hard to pin down, we got to talk about the Cocatrix.
The Cocatrix. Oh, yeah.
This thing is like a mythical mashup.
Okay.
It's part dragon, part snake, sometimes a salamander, or even a bird.
Oh.
It's almost as if, like, whoever came up with this creature couldn't decide what they wanted it to be and just threw in everything.
Right. The Cocatrix is a great example of how folklore borrows and blends elements from different creatures to create something new and fantastical.
Yeah. It's like they took the most fearsome aspects of various animals and just kind of combined them into this one terrifying beast. Like a greatest hits compilation of, scary animal parts.
I love that.
But what's interesting to me is that a lot of the stories about the Cocatrix actually focus on bravery and faith.
Okay.
Like, there's a story of Saint Veron who tames a Cocatrix using only the power of his beliefs. Have you ever heard that one?
Yes, it's a popular tale.
That's a good one, right?
And I think it speaks to this, like, enduring power of faith and courage in overcoming adversity.
It's a theme that we see over and over.
Absolutely. It resonates across cultures and throughout history.
Yeah.
It's like those stories of, like, David and Goliath or other, like, underdog heroes who triumph, through belief and sheer willpower.
Those stories, they really do always resonate with people, don't they?
They do.
It's like we're drawn to this idea that even the most fearsome creatures can be overcome, right?
Right.
With inner strength and belief.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now let's shift gears a little bit again and talk about some creatures that embody, I guess, a different kind of power, right? We're going to explore the Dames Blanches.
The Dames Blanches.
These are essentially white-clad spirits who haunt forests and bridges. They're often described as being beautiful and alluring, but also potentially dangerous.
Oh,
I think they're a great example of this kind of duality that we see in nature.
Absolutely.
They can be enchanting and benevolent.
Yeah.
But if you cross them or refuse their requests, they can become vengeful and even deadly.
Oh, wow.
It's like the way that we often see beauty and danger intertwined in the natural world, right? Like a beautiful flower that's also poisonous, or a breathtaking landscape that hides like treacherous cliffs.
Exactly.
It makes you think about how we, I guess, approach the world around us, right?
It does.
We're drawn to beauty.
Yeah.
But we also have to be aware of the potential dangers.
Right.
And I guess that's part of what makes life so, interesting, right? Speaking of things that can be both beautiful and dangerous.
Yeah.
Let's talk about gargoyles.
Gargoyles.
We see them perched on buildings all the time.
Yeah.
But there's so much more than just like architectural decorations.
Yeah.
They have this fascinating history and symbolism.
They do.
What's the story behind these stone creatures?
Well, gargoyles, I think, are this fascinating blend of practicality and symbolism, right?
Yeah.
So they were originally designed to redirect rainwater from buildings.
Oh, that's cool.
But they also took on this symbolic role as guardians against evil spirits.
Wow.
So it's like this practical solution that also serves as a protective charm.
I love it. And I love the legend of the first gargoyle.
Oh, yeah.
It's said to have been a dragon, tamed in Rouen, and then later turned to stone. It's like taking something fearsome, transforming it into something that protects.
Exactly. It's almost like a visual representation of overcoming fear and harnessing its power for good.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how we often reinterpret symbols over time, too, right? Right.
What was once a terrifying dragon becomes a protective gargoyle.
So next time you're walking around a city, take a moment to appreciate those gargoyles.
Yes.
They're not just stone creatures, they're stories etched in stone.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's amazing how these creatures, they can just spark our curiosity and make us look at the world a little differently. We've talked about creatures that embody, like, fear.
Right.
Like the Lou Carcolh and the Ankou, and those that represent, hope and protection, like St. Martha and the Tarasque.
Right.
But I'm curious, like, what about those creatures that seem to fall somewhere in between? Like the Dames Blanches.
Yeah.
Who can be, both alluring and dangerous.
Right.
Do you think they represent something more complex about human nature,
That's a great question. I think the Dames Blanches and other creatures like them, they remind us that the world isn't always black and white.
There are shades of gray, and sometimes what seems beautiful and harmless can also hold, a hidden danger.
Yeah.
It's like that old saying, look but don't touch.
Right.
Some things are best admired from a distance.
Right. It's like a reminder that we need to be cautious, but also open to the, wonders that exist around us, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of wonders, we can't wrap up this deep dive without circling back to the Baba.
The Babao, okay?
I was thinking about what you said earlier about how every culture has its own version of the boogeyman.
Yeah.
It's like this universal need, I think,
Mm-hmm.
to instill a little bit of fear
Right.
in children.
Right.
To keep them safe and teach them right from wrong.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
The Baba might be this mischievous creature,
Yeah.
but there's also this sense of order and purpose behind it.
Right.
It's not just about scaring kids for the sake of scaring them.
Right.
It's about using these, fantastical stories to reinforce societal norms and teach valuable lessons.
It's like a cultural shorthand for saying, hey, there are consequences to your actions.
Right.
But then you also see the Babu, like making appearances in carnivals.
Right.
And it's like, okay, we're also going to have a little fun with this.
Right.
We're not going to let fear completely control us.
Yeah.
I love that.
It speaks to, that human ability to find humor and joy even in the face of things that might frighten us.
Right.
It's about finding that balance.
And that idea of balance, I think it brings us back to the creatures we've been discussing today.
Mm-hmm.
They represent, I think, the full spectrum of human experience, right?
Yeah.
Fear, hope, wonder, and everything in between.
Absolutely.
It's been really, really incredible.
It has.
Exploring the world of French folklore.
Yeah.
These creatures, even though they're, products of imagination,
Yeah.
they have so much to teach us.
They do.
About ourselves and, the cultures that created them.
Exactly. And I think what's most important is that we keep that sense of wonder alive. Whether we're exploring ancient myths or just looking at the world around us with fresh eyes, there's always something new to discover.
So to all of you listening out there, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep that spark of curiosity burning bright. And who knows, maybe you'll even stumble upon your own mythical creature along the way.
Maybe.
Until next time, happy exploring.